Now we're filling in for Barbara Smith, who has the evening off. Tonight, toxic waste at the Clearview landfill. 16 years ago, the Environmental Protection Agency took test samples from the Darby Creek and Cobbs Creek and found that carcinogens, phenols, poisonous lead, and other toxic chemicals are leaking into the waterways from the 16-acre Clearview landfill. Those test results seemingly disappeared. When Hurricane Floyd came up the coast in 1999, severe flooding of the Darby Creek and Cobbs Creek caused contaminants to leak out into the waterways, engulfing neighborhood homes, businesses, and the Pepper Middle School. And what of the residents who were left behind with the chemical-laced liquid that oozed into their homes? According to a 1984 study by the State Health Data Center, the cancer mortality rate in Colwyn, Sharon Hill, Darby Borough, and Darby Township, all of which are located near the Clearview landfill, is 22% higher than the national and state rates. Joining us tonight to talk about the toxic waste in Southwest Philadelphia is Rhonda Hill-Wilson of the Citizens for Cleanup of Lower Darby Creek. Rhonda, thank you very much and welcome to Philly Live.
Thank you for having me.
Now, with all of the studies, the empirical evidence of the death and the sickness, why hasn't anything been done about this tragedy?
I think for the short answer is that people have not, in the community have not known, and so there has not been a lot of energy about correcting the problem. We are not clear on why it has not been cleaned up, and that is the question that we ask ourselves and are asking our elected officials, and really asking those people who may have known about it for the last 16 years but who have failed to correct the conditions in Philadelphia and in neighboring Delaware County.
Rhonda, do you think that too many folks would be implicated that knew all along, or the profit margin that is inherent with the redevelopment and the new homes and everything else? I mean, is that a big issue here?
I think that it's important to look at the history of the neighborhood, at least in Eastwick. And in the 1950s, that area used to be a bustling, racially mixed neighborhood that was populated by people who were very happy to be there. Then, as now, the area is a little bit of, the suburbs in Philadelphia, and people live there in peace and in harmony. A lot of the racial problems that existed in other places just did not exist in the Eastwick area. But in the 1950s, by eminent domain, the city of Philadelphia came in and took the homes of those people and tore that area down for redevelopment of a new Philadelphia. And at that time, it is our understanding that the new homes were built on silt that was dredged from the Schuylkill River, which we know has many toxins from many years of industrial use, as well as being built to areas that were already used over many years for industrial use, such as tank farms, where we are in the Eastwick areas, the Clearview landfill. There's an 80-foot high hill there that for many years, from the 50s and 60s, has been used for waste from the city and different agencies, we believe from the federal government as well. It used to be called Monkey Hill, as we've come to find out, and there have been allegations that for example, the University of Pennsylvania used to dump their rhesus monkeys from the Wistar Institute in that area. So when you talk about why it has not been cleaned up or why it existed, it was at one time an area that I believe they said it was a legal dump area, but over the years became involved in illegal reception of waste material as well.
Rhonda, before we go on, I want to invite you, the viewer, to call in with your questions or concerns. Do you know if your area is located near a toxic waste dump? Do you suspect that it is? Please give us a call and we can certainly talk about it. Rhonda, when did you move into that area, or how long did you reside in that area?
I moved into the area in 1993. It was really a beautiful, it still is a beautiful area. You go there and it's a black middle class area, and you have doctors, lawyers. It used to be an area where the Philadelphia professional football teams used to have a lot of their players that used to live there in that area. I think Maurice Cheeks lived there at one time, and people were real proud to live down there in the Penrose Park area as well as in Eastwick. I moved there in '93 with my daughters because it's a very quiet neighborhood, and the townhomes are new and it's very beautiful. If you look at it, it's green and has everything going for it. And I said, wow, this is really what I want. I want to stay in the city, but I do want quiet and peace, and I don't want to have to worry about a lot of crime. And all of those things were available there. So I looked at the area, talked with realtor and the neighbors that lived there, and decided this was the place I wanted to be. And it wasn't until Hurricane Floyd came in 1999 until we discovered what really was there. And it was at that point in time, after the flood, our area got really whacked by Hurricane Floyd. It was next to Cobbs Creek and Lower Darby Creek, and I'm sure you remember stories from 1999 when Darby had, many, many feet of water, and in fact some homes over in Darby were demolished and torn down because they were so close to the creek. Well, likewise, our homes were on the other side of Darby. We were on, as they say, on the other side of the creek, okay? And as a result of that, our homes got hit as well. There was 5 to 7 feet of water on the first floor of my home. But on top of that water was blue-green liquid material. And it was at that point that I and most of my neighbors who had moved in since the 1984 discovery of toxic substances, that's when we discovered that there was a toxic waste landfill next to our homes. And probably our homes are sitting on top of landfill as well.
Now, you're in your home and you see this blue-green slick. Well,
we weren't there because we had to be evacuated out of the area.
But just because of the water and not necessarily because of the toxicity.
Yeah, at that point it's interesting because all we knew was there was this flood. And as I said, people were being shipped out in boats from the area because the water was just that high. We weren't even thinking about toxic. We were just observing this and beginning to question it, but not knowing and dealing with the devastation that is associated with any type of natural disaster. And the Red Cross was there, and we were all, healing, trying to get ourselves together from having experienced this flood, which was devastating to most of the people that lived in the area. We lost everything on our first floor. I, for example, lost my piano that I had from a child, pictures of sentimental value, piano, I mean, you name it, sofa, all kinds of things. And that loss was hard enough in and of itself. And that began to bring the community together. But then as we talked and began to inquire, what is this blue-green stuff? Did you see it? And everyone saw it. And then by asking neighbors who had been in the area for 20 or more years, they said, oh, didn't you know? Yeah. There's a toxic waste dump. And we're like, what?
By the way.
Oh, by the way. So that is really how it started, and then we began to uncover materials from the from the 80s, where there had been a community struggle about this toxic waste dump in the Clearview landfill area, and that's when we began to dig deeper and deeper, and we were truly, truly amazed to find out, in fact, most people had bought into this area without ever knowing by
there was the danger.
Anyone, by any governmental agency, by the prior sellers, by the sellers of the home, the prior owners. No one told us that this area was a toxic waste landfill.
Catherine, we have a caller. Catherine, are you a resident in that area?
Oh, it's funny. Actually, no. I work for a social service agency that has a family center on site at Pepper Middle School. So professionally, I've seen firsthand what the ramifications have been with Hurricane Floyd mixed in with the toxic landfill situation. Ironically enough, I live in Lansdowne, and I lived not too far from the radon scare about 8 years ago. So, for some reason it seems to, follow me around. In any case, I just was wondering, two questions. I had two questions. What is the funding situation for the cleanup as it stands now? Do you know how many people are still affected by who need to have restoration of their homes in the area. And third question, I know I said two. But my third question
You must be a lawyer.
Pardon me?
I said you must be a lawyer.
No, I'm a social worker.
Okay.
Yeah, the third question is, what has there been any reported birth defects, a rise in incidence of birth defects in the community?
Thanks for that call, Catherine. The first is, I guess, the issue of funding and the cleanup. Why don't we tackle that one?
Okay. At this point in time, that is our plea, and this is our struggle to have the area remediated or cleaned up. But in the time that it will take to have it cleaned up, which they are saying will be anywhere, once it's placed on the list, from 4 years to figure out how to clean it up to 10 to 15 years to clean it up, we are asking to be relocated because every day the people remain in the area, they are exposed to toxins. And so at this point in time, there are no funds that I am aware of to have the area cleaned up, but that is why we are struggling, and Toxic Waters, the film that's to follow, will tell you more about what it is that we're struggling about.
Now, I would imagine that the time, I guess, the gestation period or the residue buildup in our cells, at least what I hear about the toxicity and as it relates to the cancer, have there been any birth defects that you've known of?
I don't know of birth defects, but we can tell you that there have been many women who have suffered from low birth weight babies, also who have attempted to have children but who have miscarried. Every time we have a meeting, women and men both come to us and tell us things that they thought were only happening to them in the privacy of their own home, not realizing it was a problem that threatened the entire community. Women who have had miscarriages. The problems that we see predominantly are prostate cancer, breast cancer, cancer of the uterus, colon cancer, lung cancer, asthma, and other lung-related diseases, as well as skin diseases. And I know I had a friend who worked at the Pepper Middle School who I was speaking to just this past Sunday who taught there and had breast cancer. So it doesn't matter if you live in that neighborhood, if you work in that neighborhood, we believe that you could possibly be affected as well. And it seems that the period of time that people, once they're exposed to these toxins, it takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years to manifest signs of toxic illness.
Rhonda, am I being too idealistic? I mean, certainly this is empirical evidence, but if I was watching the folks that I grew up with and knew and loved sicken as a result possibly of the area in which we lived, I don't understand why there haven't been public officials that have come forward and let me take a look at this.
Well, I will tell you at this time, and this is the letter to me, Bradley Campbell is the regional administrator of the EPA for this area, and I received a letter from him in July in which he related to me that the city of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are opposed to putting the site on the national priorities list for Superfund. So that says to me that not only are they not coming forward to help us, but they are actively opposed to the cleanup of this area. And that is unconscionable. It is inhumane. I think as human beings, we have the right to expect our government, our local, state, and federal government to protect us. And right now, it seems that our community is in a struggle against these agencies and these governmental entities who not only are not going to help us, but oppose us. And at this point in time, by their opposition, we remain there longer, and people, children, adults, and older people are exposed day by day to these toxins. I call them murderers, anybody who would call us to live in this area, anybody who would oppose us living in a healthy environment and continue to expose us to these poisons, to these toxins, which are known toxins. Dioxin is a known toxin. PCBs are known toxins. Lead is known toxin. I mean, so they have the EPA's list of how many different types of carcinogens are in at least the Clearview landfill. 70% of them are on the ATSDR's top 20 list, and the ATSDR is the federal public health agency that tracks toxin and related illnesses. So if we're talking about that, anybody who would keep us there in my view,
Through the opposition.
through their opposition or inaction.